Hiring people is the biggest pain in the ass for, I think, any business owner, but it becomes the most necessary core function of any owner at some point in their career. My name's Gavin. I make these videos to document my own journey, really just share what I'm doing, provide some tips and tricks. I don't really have anything to sell you on this channel, so subscribe, I guess, validate my human existence. In today's video, I'm gonna teach you, or rather share my own personal experiences when it comes to hiring staff, because hiring people has been both the most important and the most difficult thing I have had to do within my agency. You have no idea how many idiots I have hired that I've had to get rid of, and the gems that I have, you have no idea how valuable my immediate core team actually is to growing my business and any business for that matter. So just to give some context, I run an email and SMS marketing agency, and at the time of recording, we have 9 full-time staff members. All 9 of them, if you're watching this, are studs. They're great at what they do, and they're part of my core team because of 3 reasons. 1, they're intelligent. 2, they have good attention to detail. And 3, they are proactive. Those are really the 3 core functionalities that you need. Everything else can be taught. Now, when you first hire somebody, you have to have like such a clear radar as to whether or not someone's going to be a good fit for your company. And you can usually tell within the first week of hiring them. When you hire somebody, my process for hiring is typically I have a very basic test that we weed out a bunch of people. After that test, we bring somebody on part-time. Then after we go part-time, depending on how they do, we bring them on to full-time. Now, the first thing you have to keep in mind before analyzing whether or not somebody is good or what, diligent or attention to detail is making sure you set that individual that you hire up for success. You are gonna have a much more difficult time finding out if somebody is a good employee or a good team member if your systems and your processes are dog shit and really hard to follow. For example, when we hire a project manager, and you should check out the other videos I have on this channel which go into my systems and processes, we have very clear SOPs that I can drop a project manager, a copywriter, or a designer into that are very easy to follow. So that if they do make a mistake, odds are it's because of them rather than the systems and processes. We're trying to get a clear indication of what issues are happening and mitigating anything that would suggest that perhaps the problems with the work that they've delivered is because of our clear SOPs or the lack thereof. So the first thing you want to make sure when you're hiring is you have a very clear system and process that the person you can hire, that you do hire, is able to follow, okay? The other thing you need to be aware of is I recommend gradually ramping people up. So when you have the test, after they do the test, by the way, I typically recommend doing a paid test. I think it's just the ethical thing to do for certain tasks. For tasks like write one email, no, but for designing an email, sure, because I run an email and SMS marketing agency. But when you have the task that you want to do, okay, you have the test, you have the task, then you go part-time. And what you do is you actually just set the person up that you're employing with like one project or one task. And you want to look at 3 things. The first thing is how timely they are in delivering the work. Can they meet deadlines? The second thing is the quality of the work. And the third thing is how many questions do they ask? Typically, the more questions somebody asks when you bring them on board, the better. I know it sounds crazy and it might feel like a pain in the ass.
Nice.
But it's usually a sign that somebody wants to do a good job and they're curious and they're not shy or nervous to actually push back on things. Now, let's say they pass all those things. They do good work, they do it timely, and they do it with a good level of, pushback in terms of, hey, what do I do here? How do I do this? You then gradually want to start ramping them up with how much work you want to give them. And what you want to keep an eye on when you ramp them up is how do they manage deadlines? Because the more work you give them, the more deadlines they're going to have. Are they responding in a timely manner? Are they pushing back on deadlines? And if they are, that's a good thing. And also, are they telling the truth about their capacity? You need to have a rough idea of how long certain projects and tasks are going to take. And if your designer, project manager, or whoever you hire is taking longer than they should, you need to be aware of that, because that means either 2 things. 1, they're slow at what they're doing, i.e. it's going to cost you too much money, or B, they've lied to you about how much work they are able to take on. That's a massive one. If somebody lies to you about, I'm fully available, and then they actually have 2 projects on simultaneously, and this has happened so many goddamn times, you gotta have a really long and hard think about whether or not you need to have a stern conversation with them about that or just get rid of them. The third thing, once you go from that to full time, is you just need to have such a clear radar as to when people are falling short. More often than not, 95% of the time, you know that somebody is not gonna be a good hire. And a lot of the times, I do this all the time too, it feels like it's too much of a hassle to fire somebody. Let's say you're 3 months in, right? They've gone full time, fantastic, and you just keep feeling like issues aren't being solved or resolved. And you're at this point where you're like, God, this is a constant pain in the ass. But for me to fire this person and hire a new person would be a bigger pain in the ass for a shorter period of time. I guarantee you, take the harder path, right? If somebody's a 5 out of 10 pain in the ass working with you, I would much rather take a 10 out of 10 pain in the ass and hire somebody new that would take me 2 weeks rather than deal with 3 or 4 months of just like subpar work. You have to bite the bullet and make the decision of like, you know what, this isn't working, I know it's not working, and be proactive and just cut that person quickly. Because the longer you bring them on and the longer you let this subpar work and this subpar attitude stay in your company, the more reliant you're gonna be on them. And honestly, the harder it's gonna be to get rid of them when you inevitably have to do it anyway. You're going to have to get rid of this person at some point regardless, especially if they've been trained and they're not improving, they're not learning, they're not changing. You're gonna have to get rid of them at some point. Do it now, get it over with, pull the Band-Aid off, and then bring somebody else in new. This is why it's so important when you're actually hiring people and you select one person, have a roster of everybody else who you've actually interviewed who you think might be a good fit. I do a bunch of copywriter tests, and we've hired 1 copywriter, and we have 4 others that we know we can bring in short notice if need be. And just having a list of people that you know you can reach out with, that you can swap in really quickly and do that same process again is super valuable. Honestly, the biggest lesson I've probably learned when it comes to hiring is just not to tolerate bullshit. Now, set someone up for success, treat them with respect, set clear expectations, don't be an asshole, right? Just because they're working for you doesn't give you the right to lord over them. Treat them like a human being. I can't tell you how many jobs I've had where my managers don't seem to understand that lesson. But also be stern in what your expectations are and what you want from somebody. And if they don't meet those, just move on. Don't drag it out. Don't compromise on short-term pain for long-term pain, right? Bite the bullet, pull the Band-Aid off, and just move on to the next person. I'm recording this video because I'm sure, as you can tell, I've literally just gone through a process of employment issues like this. So if you have any questions, chuck them in the comment section down below. I make these videos to document my own journey, have a little bit of fun, nothing to sell you here. 3 new videos every single week. Check out my newsletter in the description if you have time, where I just talk about email and SMS marketing. But until then, I'll see you in the next video when I finish this coffee. Thanks for watching.